You were 3 days away from breaking. That's not a metaphor. That's a timestamp. The enemy ran the numbers on you. He predicted the collapse. He expected bitterness. He expected the screenshot. He expected you to walk away and never look back. But you didn't. And that is why the atmosphere around you feels different right now. Not because God is absent. Because God is watching. And in a few minutes I'm going to tell you the real reason heaven went quiet in your season. Because it wasn't punishment. It was something far more dangerous to darkness. Chosen one, center your spirit right now. Do not let the distraction of this world steal this specific moment from you. Logically, you should have broken 3 days ago. You should have turned bitter. You should have walked away. The fact that you are still standing despite the betrayal, despite the silence, despite the exhaustion, is a spiritual anomaly. You think God is silent because he is absent. No, he is silent because he is stunned. You did not just pass the test. You confused the enemy and captivated heaven. The waiting room is closed. The verdict is in. And God's reaction to your victory is about to change your reality. Listen to me closely. This message has been trying to reach you for 72 hours. The enemy tried to distract you with drama, with sudden fatigue, with noise, with technical glitches, just to keep your thumb scrolling past this. But you broke through. You are here. And I need you to understand, this is not a YouTube video. This is a divine summons, a scheduled appointment in the spirit realm that you just walked into. Before we go any further, make a covenant with yourself right now. Do not leave this message until the final second. I am not asking for your watch time. I am asking for your focus because we are going to unlock the divine or protocol. By the end of this recording, you will understand exactly why your life has been under such heavy fire. You will receive the framework to handle the promotion that is coming. And we will seal this with an activation that will shift your trajectory. If you leave halfway, you are walking out of the operating room while the surgery is still in progress. Do not do that to your destiny. Stay, receive, finish what God started. Now, let us look at where you are. I want you to verify if this resonates with your spirit right now. Even as you hear my voice, you feel a heaviness. Not a spiritual heaviness, but a physical pressure, specifically in the center of your chest, slightly to the left. It feels like a weight you have been carrying for weeks. You wake up in the morning and before your feet even touch the floor, you let out a sigh that sounds like it's coming from the bottom of your soul. You are tired, but it is not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. You could sleep for 12 hours and still wake up exhausted, because your spirit has been bench pressing weights in the unseen realm that most people would be crushed by. You've been sitting in a room that feels like a waiting room for months, staring at walls that refuse to move, checking your phone for a notification that never comes, asking the ceiling, God, did I fail? Did I miss the turn? Why is it so quiet? You have felt like an invisible man or an invisible woman. You walk into rooms and feel like you're behind a glass wall. You speak, but people don't seem to hear you. You help, but nobody says thank you. You give, but nobody reciprocates. And lately there has been a specific fear creeping into your mind at 3 a.m., a cold thought that whispers, maybe I'm delusional. Maybe God forgot me. Maybe I'm suffering for nothing. Take a breath and let that air hit the back of your throat. Listen to me, that pressure on your chest, that is not depression. That is not anxiety. That is not a medical condition. In Hebrew, the word for glory is kavod. And do you know what kavod literally means? It means heavy. It means weighty. The pressure you are feeling is not the weight of the world. It is the weight of glory settling upon your life. You are feeling heavy because God is trusting you with a massive assignment. You do not put heavy cargo on a weak ship. The fact that you feel this pressure is the first sign you've been approved for the transport of something massive. But the silence. Let's talk about the silence. That's what hurts the most, isn't it? You have been loyal. You have been faithful. You have kept your hands clean when you could have gotten them dirty. And yet heaven seems to have gone mute. No dreams, no visions, no clear voice, just static, and the enemy has been using this silence to torment you. He tells you God left the building. He tells you you're disqualified, but I am here to prophesy to your spirit today. The silence you are hearing is not the silence of abandonment. It is the silence of awe. Picture a grandmaster chess player making a move nobody saw coming. The entire stadium goes quiet. Nobody speaks. Nobody breathes. They just watch, stunned by the brilliance of the move. Chosen one, you are that move. But here's where most chosen ones fail, right at the finish line. They misunderstand what the test actually was. And if you don't catch this, you'll brace for pain you were never meant to carry. God is silent right now because He is watching you with wonder. He is looking at your timeline, the trauma you survived, the people who walked out, the financial cliff you're standing on. And He is stunned that you are still praising Him. stunned that you are still kind, stunned that you haven't cursed him and died. You are a glitch in the enemy's system. The enemy's algorithm predicted you would crash months ago. His data said you'd be bitter, vengeful, numb. But you're here listening to a word about God. That's why the atmosphere is quiet. You have the full attention of the throne room, but here is the danger, and I need you to hear this with precision. God is not stunned because you are strong. Endurance is the baseline. Endurance is what we expect from a soldier. But you are not just a soldier, you are royalty. God is stunned because of a specific choice you made when you had the power to destroy someone. This is the secret. This is the mystery. And once you understand this, the heavy weight on your chest is going to lift. For the longest time, you thought this season was an endurance test. You looked at the sleepless nights, the financial drought, the betrayal, and concluded, God is testing how much pain I can take. So you gritted your teeth, swallowed your tears, put on the mask of invincible strength, because you believed surviving was the assignment, and because you believed that you are exhausted. Endurance is draining, endurance is defensive, endurance is just trying not to die. But chosen one, hear this, endurance was not the final test, endurance was the prerequisite. James chapter 1 verse 12 says, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life." Most people stop at perseveres, but the Greek word used for stood the test is dokimos. That word doesn't mean you survived the fire. It's a metallurgical term for gold and silver. It means you went into the fire, you melted down. The impurities floated to the top and were skimmed off, and what came out was approved. So if the endurance was the fire, what was the impurity? Here's the revelation that flips everything. The test was not about how thick your skin is. The test was about how soft your heart remained. The spiritual anomaly isn't your strength, it's your mercy, specifically, your ability to show mercy when you had the valid reason and perfect opportunity to take revenge. Let's zoom into that moment, that conversation, that text thread. Your heart was racing, your stomach was in knots. The evidence was right there. The betrayal was clear. The lies were blatant, and that voice, loud, logical, human, screamed, "Destroy them, expose them, send the screenshot." Ruin their reputation like they ruined yours. It wasn't holy. It wasn't pretty. It was raw rage. And then you did something that makes no human sense. You paused. You felt the heat in your chest, but you didn't release it. You looked at the weapon in your hand, and you put it down. You deleted the draft. You walked away. You chose silence when you could have chosen violence. That moment, right there, stunned heaven, because endurance is natural. Anyone fights for survival, but mercy while bleeding, mercy, with the knife still in your back, that's supernatural. That's divine DNA activating inside a human vessel. When you chose not to strike back, you showed heaven you're not just a survivor. You showed heaven you can be trusted with power. Because if you cannot stop yourself from destroying someone when you are weak, God cannot trust you with authority when you are strong. The test was never, can you take a punch? It was, will you throw one back? And you passed. You kept your heart soft in a season designed to make it stone. Now I can hear the fear rising in your throat. If I show mercy, won't they do it again? If I don't fight back, am I a doormat? How do I show mercy to someone still holding a weapon? That's not a small question. And the answer is not naive softness, it's strategy. There is an ancient maneuver King David used to turn his enemy into a footstool without ever lifting a sword. It's what I call the Davidic Paradox. And if you want to walk into your promotion, you need to understand this immediately. To understand it, I need you to walk with me into 1 Samuel chapter 24. Because what happens in that cave is going to explain your next move. And after that, I'm going to give you the 3-step protocol that keeps mercy from turning into weakness. Imagine the smell of damp limestone, stale air. It's dark, hot. You're hiding in the back of a cave in the wilderness of En-Gedi. You're David, anointed to be king, but living like a hunted man. Then the light at the cave entrance is blocked. A silhouette steps in. It's Saul, alone, vulnerable. He has come in to relieve himself, unaware you and your men are feet away in the shadows. Your men whisper, "David, this is the day. God has delivered your enemy into your hand, do it." And listen, this logic sounds like prophecy. It sounds like God, it sounds like justice. Killing Saul would solve everything, but David does something that stuns the angels watching. He creeps forward, knife in hand, close enough to end it. And instead of cutting Saul's throat, he cuts the corner of Saul's robe. Why the robe? Because the hem represented authority. David was saying, I hold your reputation. I hold your life. I could take it all, but I choose restraint. This is the Davidic Paradox. You don't win the throne by killing the king. You win the throne by sparing him. True power isn't displayed when you destroy someone weaker than you. True power is displayed when you have the ability to destroy and you restrain yourself. So how do you apply this tomorrow morning? Two movements: restrain and release. Restrain is having the nuclear codes and choosing not to push the button. The sword is not metal. The sword is the screenshot on your phone, the secret you know about the coworker sabotaging you, the scathing email you've drafted in your mind. The enemy wants you to swing the sword, because if you do, you might win the argument, but you will lose the anointing. Restraint means you cut the robe, you acknowledge the truth, without going for the kill. Then comes release. David shouted, "May the Lord judge between you and me, but my hand will not touch you." That's release. You're handing the court case to the supreme judge, because when you try to get revenge, you can only touch their circumstances. When God deals with them, He deals with their soul. Now let me show you this works in real life. Before you decide mercy makes you a doormat, I need you to see what happens when mercy becomes strategy, because what Sarah did in private forced heaven to respond in public. Let me tell you about a chosen one. We'll call her Sarah. 6 months ago, Sarah walked into her own cave of En-Gedi. Not a literal cave, but a moment so dark, so humiliating, so shocking, she couldn't even cry at first. She found text messages on her husband's phone. Not suspicion, not maybe, proof. Names, dates, places, messages that left no room for denial. And in that moment, Sarah didn't just feel betrayal, she felt power, because now she had the weapon. She had the screenshots, the receipts, the other woman's name, her job, her husband's profile, everything. Sarah sat in her car with her thumb hovering over one button, and she could have ended multiple lives in one post. Open loop, and here's the part nobody talks about. When you have that kind of evidence, the temptation isn't just anger, it's identity. It's the desire to prove you weren't crazy, and we're coming back to that. Her friends, just like David's men, called it wisdom. Post it, tag them, expose it, let the world see what they did. And Sarah wanted to. Every part of her wounded soul screamed for justice, but right as her thumb hovered over send, she felt something she couldn't explain, a check in her spirit. Not condemnation, not shame. A restraint, like a hand on the inside of her chest saying, "Don't swing the sword." So Sarah did the impossible. She restrained. She saved the evidence because wisdom documents reality. But she refused to use it as a weapon. She confronted her husband with truth, not theatrics. She cut the corner of the robe, but she did not go for the kill. She said, "I know what you did. I am hurt, but I'm stepping back and letting God deal with you." And then, silence, 6 weeks of silence, and to everybody watching it looked like weakness. It looked like she got played. It looked like she was being a doormat. It looked like the enemy won. But heaven was working in the courtroom. Because when you step out of the judgment seat, you give God room to sit in it. And let me tell you what happened next. The heavy weight of guilt, kavod, but in the form of conviction, fell on that man so hard he could not sleep. Not because Sarah shamed him, not because she dragged him publicly, not because she destroyed his reputation, but because she made space for God to deal with his soul. One night in a hotel room, miles away from her, he had what can only be described as a Damascus Road encounter. He broke, not into excuses, into repentance. He came back not just sorry, changed. And today, he's the one leading the home in prayer. He's the one chasing after God. He's the one rebuilding what he shattered. Sarah didn't win her husband back by fighting. She won by sparing. That's the Davidic Paradox. When you spare your enemy, you confuse the kingdom of darkness, and you create a vacuum God rushes in to fill. Open loop. But I know what your mind is trying to say right now. That's beautiful, but my enemy won't repent. Good. That question is exactly where your promotion is hiding. Because here's the objection rising in your chest. That worked for David. That worked for Sarah. But my enemy is different. If I show mercy, they'll reload. If I stay silent, they'll trample me. If I forgive, I'll be used. That fear of being a doormat. Listen to me. That fear is one of the biggest barriers standing between you and your breakthrough. And we're not going to bypass it with cliches. Let's be honest. There is a knot in your stomach because your survival instinct is screaming, "If I don't fight back, I'm agreeing with the disrespect." And I want you to know, that does not make you a bad Christian. It makes you a human being who has been hurt before. You have scars that prove when you lowered your guard, people took advantage. So mercy feels like handing a loaded gun to someone who already shot you once. But that fear is built on a false definition that has crippled believers for centuries. You were taught the opposite of revenge is weakness. You were taught humility means passive, but that is not biblical meekness. Matthew chapter 5 verse 5 says, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." When you hear meek, you picture someone apologizing for existing. But the word Jesus used was the Greek word praus, and praus was not used for weak people. It was used for a warhorse. Picture a stallion, thousands of pounds of muscle, designed for war, hooves that can crack bone, fire in its eyes. But when that stallion was trained, when it brought all that power under authority, it was called praus. Meekness is not weakness. Meekness is dangerous power under control. So when God asks you to show mercy, He is not asking you to become harmless. He's asking you to become disciplined, because only someone with power can show mercy. A harmless rabbit cannot show mercy, it has no capacity to destroy. Only a lion can show mercy, only a warrior can restrain, and when you restrain yourself you are not saying, "I'm weak," you are saying, "I'm so powerful and so governed by the Spirit of God, I refuse to crush you even though I can." That's not a doormat, that's a king. Now here comes the pivot that changes everything. Why does it bother you so much if they think they won? Why does their smirk burn you up? Because you think they're the audience. You're living like you're on a stage, and your enemies are in the front row, your ex-friend, your doubters, your haters. So their reaction controls your emotions. If they clap, you feel good. If they boo, you feel bad. If they smirk, you get angry. But close your eyes for a moment. Don't change your posture, just shift your gaze. Picture that stage again. Now look past the front row, the lights lift. And you realize the auditorium isn't filled with your enemies, it's filled with heaven. Hebrews chapter 12 verse 1 says we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. That's not poetry, that's a reality. David is there, leaning forward, watching you in your cave moment. Joseph is there, he knows the pit. Stephen is there, he knows what it is to bless your killers. And in the center, Jesus, silent before Pilate, merciful on the cross. He is your audience, not your boss, not your enemy, not the liar, not the one who betrayed you. They're extras, props, tools used to test your character. So why are you trying to win an argument with an extra? The only eyes that matter are the eyes of the director. And once you realize that, the trap snaps open, you become free. You can smile at your enemy, not because you agree with them, but because you no longer need their validation to know who you are. You stop reacting, you start strategizing, you stop fighting like a survivor, you start moving like a sovereign. And this is where we enter the divine protocol, operating room protocol. 3 moves that signal to heaven you're ready for transfer of authority. Memorize them, because the next time you're attacked, your instincts will scream at you to do the opposite. Move 1, sovereign silence. This is not the silence of fear. Fear is silent because it's afraid of consequences. Sovereign silence is silent because it already knows the outcome. Jesus stood before Pilate, questions flying, accusations coming, and he gave him no fuel. Why? Because a defendant argues. A king declares. When you argue with your accuser, you step down from your throne and stand in mud. So the next time someone lies on you, misrepresents you, attacks your character, your first move is to lock your lips. No explanation, no defending, no clarifying. Let the lie hang. Because when you refuse to defend yourself, you force God to become your defense. And He has never lost a case. Move 2, the table. Psalm chapter 23 verse 5 says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." Notice the location. The enemy is still there, but God sets abundance right in front of them. Here's the strategy. You cannot eat and fight at the same time. If you leave the table to go fight, you starve yourself. But if you stay at the table, building, growing, working, obeying, the enemy has to sit there and watch you prosper. The greatest revenge is not destruction. It's visible acceleration. So your move is to focus so intensely on your assignment that you treat the enemy like furniture. You don't argue with furniture. You don't fight furniture. You eat. Move 3, the blessing. Jesus said, "Bless those who curse you." That is not a poetic sentiment. That is a weapon. Curses operate on a frequency of hatred. Blessing releases the frequency of love, and darkness cannot comprehend light. It creates a spiritual short circuit in the demonic systems behind that person. Bring their face to your mind right now. Instead of imagining punishment, imagine light, and say in your spirit, "I bless them. I bless their finances. I bless their health. I release them from my judgment." Feel the resistance, that's your flesh dying, push through it. Because when you bless them, you sever the tether tying you to their dysfunction. Now, does this work in the real world? Let me show you. There's a man named Michael who watches this channel. 8 months ago, a new manager entered his department. Insecure, manipulative, threatened by Michael's talent. It started small. Michael was left off email chains. Then his ideas were stolen in meetings, then sabotage. One day, Michael found out 5 minutes before a major presentation. The manager had taken a project Michael built over 3 months and put his own name on the cover. Michael's blood was boiling, and he had the proof, the email trail, the timestamps, the receipts. He was ready to storm that conference room and expose the fraud in front of the CEO. He was ready to swing the sword. But in the hallway, Michael stopped. He felt pressure in his chest, and he chose the protocol, sovereign silence. He didn't storm the room. He didn't send the rage email. He sat down. Then he moved to the table. Instead of fighting for credit, he worked twice as hard on the next phase of the project. because he knew the manager couldn't execute it. And then Michael applied the blessing. Every morning on his drive to work he prayed for that man. He prayed for his insecurity. He prayed for his family. He prayed for healing. He said it felt like swallowing broken glass, but he kept doing it. 3 weeks later, the CEO called Michael into his office. Michael thought he was getting fired. The CEO said, "I noticed something in the last presentation. The data was good, but when I asked your manager to explain the strategy, he froze." Then the CEO said something Michael didn't expect. "But what impressed me more is that you never complained. You never bad-mouthed him. You just kept delivering excellence. That kind of character is rare." That afternoon, the manager was let go. Not because Michael exposed him, but because the table was prepared in the presence of the enemy, and the enemy exposed himself. And then the stunner. The CEO didn't just give Michael his credit back. He created a new position, Vice President of Strategy, skipping 2 levels of management. Michael was promoted over the very seat that tried to crush him. That is the divine protocol, silence. The table, the blessing, it works because it takes the battle out of human logic and puts it under divine jurisdiction. But I need to warn you, this is not a game. When you activate this protocol, you light a flare in the spirit realm. You signal to heaven, "I'm ready for promotion," and you signal to hell, "I'm a threat." Do not think the enemy will let you walk into new authority without resistance. He will change tactics, and I've seen this pattern over and over. Within 40 days of activating this protocol, counterstrikes show up. These aren't random bad days. They're calculated traps designed to get you to lower your standard and return to your old way of fighting. If you don't recognize them, you'll think you failed. But you didn't fail. You're being tested at the next level. And the first strike usually arrives within 24 hours. Do not sleep on this. Because the enemy attacks more intensely when you forgive than when you fight. Why? Because darkness feeds on low vibration, strife, bitterness, offense, revenge. When you argue and plot revenge, you set a dinner table for demonic spirits. But the moment you choose the protocol, you cut off their food supply. You starve the enemy out of your environment. And a starving predator is an angry predator. So he tries to bait you back into the fight, so he can eat again. For the next 40 days you are entering a high alert zone. I call them the 7 counterstrikes. I can't cover all 7 right now, but I must warn you about the 3 deadliest. If you fall into these, you abort your promotion immediately. Trap 1. Victim bait. This usually arrives as a reactivation text, a petty move, unexpected disrespect. You'll be walking in peace and suddenly the person you forgave does something small, but sharp. The enemy is fishing. He wants you to say, "See, mercy doesn't work." He wants you back in victim mentality, because once you're a victim, you lose kingly authority. When it happens, don't react. Name it. That's bait. And swim past the hook. Trap 2, the gossip trap. You will feel an urge to tell someone, to vent, to narrate how mature you were. Stop. The moment you broadcast your forgiveness, you're leaking power. True mercy doesn't need an audience. If you must talk to God or a trusted counselor for healing, not validation. Because the more you rehearse the wound, the longer you keep it open. Trap 3, the pride trap. This is the deadliest. You will start to feel above them. You'll feel cleaner, higher, more spiritual. And the enemy will whisper, "Look how holy you are compared to them." If you agree with that whisper, you become the Pharisee. Luke chapter 18 shows the Pharisee praying, "God, I thank you I'm not like other people." He's doing the right things with the wrong spirit. And the moment arrogance enters, God resists. You pass the test of mercy, but you failed the test of humility. So how do you survive these counterstrikes? How do you stay sovereign? Here's the key. Because there are 3 anchors you must hold for 40 days, 3 internal disciplines that keep you from picking the sword back up, and if you apply them, your promotion becomes inevitable. So how do you win this confrontation? How do you survive the counterstrikes without picking the sword back up? You anchor yourself to 3 internal disciplines for the next 40 days, not forever, just long enough for heaven to complete the transfer. Anchor 1. Memory. You remember why you laid the sword down in the first place. Not to be noble, not to look spiritual, but because God showed you that retaliation would shrink you, and restraint would elevate you. Every time you're tempted to react, you remind yourself, "I already passed this test once. I'm not retaking it at a lower level." Anchor 2. Vision. You stop staring at the enemy's behavior and start staring at your assignment. The enemy wants your attention because attention fuels influence. But vision starves distraction. You don't argue with people who are no longer in your future. You don't fight battles that delay where you're going. You keep your eyes forward because kings don't turn around for hecklers. Anchor 3. Surrender. This is the hardest one. You resist the urge to secretly hope God punishes them quickly so you can feel vindicated. Instead, you release the outcome completely. You tell God, however you handle this, I trust you. Because the moment you try to control the verdict, you step back into the courtroom. And you were never meant to be the judge. If you hold these 3 anchors, something begins to happen quietly, but unmistakably. Your reactions slow down, your clarity sharpens, your authority settles in. The noise that once provoked you starts to sound distant. The urgency to defend yourself fades, and you realize something has shifted, not around you, but within you. That's how you know the promotion is real. Not because circumstances change overnight, not because people apologize, but because you no longer need them to. The enemy doesn't lose because you fought harder. He loses because he can no longer reach you. And that is the moment heaven moves. Doors open without announcements. Opposition dissolves without confrontation. And what once tried to block you quietly steps aside. Chosen one, hear this clearly. You were not tested to see how much pain you could endure. You were tested to see if you could be trusted with power. And you passed. You are not late. You are not overlooked. You are not stuck. You are cleared. So stay disciplined. Stay merciful. Stay aligned. Do not pick the sword back up. God is not finished. He is positioning. And what comes next will make the silence make sense. If this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, type Amen in the comments, not for visibility, but as a marker, a declaration that says, I choose restraint over reaction, authority over ego, alignment over delay. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, someone standing at their own cave moment, share this with them. Sometimes God uses one word at the right moment to prevent a lifetime of regret. Stay connected. The next message will reveal what happens after the 40 days and why many people lose momentum right after the breakthrough begins. This isn't the end of your story. It's the moment the crown becomes visible.